felt trapped in a toxic work environment or a toxic ministry? Wondering how to turn things around for yourself and your team?
Today, on Thrive by the Rising Muse, we dive deep into overcoming toxic environments and cultivating character based leadership. Stay tuned because this episode is packed with insightfulness and practical advice that you don't want to miss.
I'm Natty.
I'm Vita,
And we are here to thrive. Welcome to Thrive by the Rising Muse, the podcast where we explore faith, family, and mental health. Today, we are thrilled to have Earl Morrison with us. Earl is a retired chief of police, former assistant director at the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training, and now he's a mentor and an author.
Earl has over 29 years of leadership experience and specializes in character-based leadership development. He is enthusiastic about helping individuals and organizations overcome toxic environments through his consulting and mentoring programs. Earl, welcome to the show. Could you start by sharing a bit about your background in law enforcement and how it led you to focus on mentoring and leadership development?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Again, thank you guys for having me. So as you said, I recently retired. I'm not sure how that's going to last because I still have that little bit of calling. I don't know that I'm ready to give it up, but I'm trying to, if you will. But how we got to where we are with our business, and we've had our business Leading and Learning with Character for 7 years now. We just celebrated that in June. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. Back in 2014, I had this dream that I wanted to be a police chief. And so we prayed about it. We pursued that. God opened a door for us in Central Texas, and I became a chief of police. And so, you're living that dream, and we were in a very nice area, so we're thinking, we're going to be here long term. God's really blessing us. This is going to take off. And as you know, you want to test things, think that you have God figured out and that He's going to bless you long term in a certain place. And a little over 2.5 years in, our political landscape completely changed, and we found ourselves out of a job. I was no longer the chief of police. And if you've ever had to leave a job or a place before you finished, before you felt like your business was completed, that's a huge thing. As you're trying to figure that out, and we're praying and trying to understand, one of the things I wanted to know, my wife Penny wanted to understand, is what were we supposed to learn from this? Because everything that we're going through, good, bad, or indifferent, God's teaching us something. He's preparing us for something. And so, when we were trying to process through that, a lot of people say this, but very few people actually end up doing it. They always talk about writing a book. And so, we started talking about it, and I said, well, I should write a book about the lessons that I learned. Of course, that's kind of how those conversations go sometime, and then you just leave them. Well, it didn't go away. It kept hearing that, okay, well, if you're gonna talk, then maybe you should not just talk the talk. Maybe you need to start walking the walk. And so you started praying about that. And so the big thing in that was I wanted to know, what did I learn, and then how could I help someone else that may go through some of those same situations? Because there's some things that I went through, and there's some things in leadership that happen behind the scenes that we don't like to talk about, because they're difficult things to talk about. One, and people get their feelings hurt sometimes when you get put on the spot and you get called in and talk about accountability and some of those other things. So that's what we did. We wrote our first book, Leadership Lessons Learned. And as we wrote it, and again, as I processed through that, I tell everybody, writing is a healing process too, especially if you've gone through something difficult.
Absolutely.
And so that was one of those things that for me helped. And I think it helped my wife too, because she was one of my editors in processing that, but I had to redo it like 5 times. And the reason is because, again, when we're getting our emotions out, it's a healing process, and then we have to get to a point where there's something we can actually share with someone else. And so we finally got there. But then I thought, okay, so what about the person that's not going to read, that doesn't take the time to dive into a book? How can we further help them? And so as we processed that, we started looking at creating some of the classes, talking about leadership development. And I've always been passionate about mentoring, even way back when I was a sergeant, even back before I became an actual supervisor, just mentoring other people and trying to help people learn and grow was a passion of mine. And so we created the business while writing the book. And so then we started creating the classes. And what it has allowed me to do is that each time, I go through something different, it's allowed me to learn something new. And the crazy thing is that didn't happen just one time. It happened again the second place I was a chief. It didn't happen just twice. It happened a third time. Kind of the same kind of situation. You go in, make some changes, bring some accountability. Folks like accountability when you do it for other people. They don't like it when it entails them as well. And so 3 times we've been through that. I have published 3 books. I have one that's in the editing stage right now. That's another one that's coming out. And so that's kind of how everything just got us to where we are right now, is that, we do provide both online and in-person classes, and we have mentoring packages and other things that we provide to help people process through that negative mindset, that toxic environment, and make some of those changes, and then help them develop themselves as they move forward.
One of the things that I tell myself, and you were talking about your book and how you were like, what do I need to learn from here? And I believe that when we go through a same situation repeatedly, it's because there's a lesson we keep missing, and that's why we end up going again. So I understand that frame of mind of thinking, wait a minute, if I'm here again, what did I miss the last time that I'm here again? You're talking about the impact of toxic environments. Can you describe some of the common signs of a toxic workplace?
Sure, absolutely. One of the biggest ones that I've found across my career, and even when I go in places, when you've been an observer, and I have for 30 plus years in being a police officer, but then in the leadership aspect of it, the culture is almost, you can almost see it because they don't communicate with each other. And when they do, it's not very wholesome. Matter of fact, you'll go in and people will be bitter towards one another. One organization I went into, they had several different divisions, and none of these people talked to each other. They just got in their own little silo, and part of that is when you don't communicate, you're creating toxicity right there.
Right.
Yes.
The other thing is that when you don't communicate, you're not building trust, and if you're not building trust, you don't have respect. When they're not communicating, when their behaviors are negative and toxic, when they're bitter toward each other, those are the biggest signs. I mean, people always think, well, I didn't say those things. Yes, but your body language said it all. I've walked in the door of some of these organizations, and you know what I'm talking about. When I say this, you can feel the life.
Yes.
It's gone.
Yes.
You can feel that there's a problem there. And the reality of it is it's so evident, but nobody wants to address it. And honestly, if you look at any person that has a bad attitude, toxic mindset, or an organization that has the same, it's evident to most people outside the organization. But internally, it's usually not as evident because they get in there and it's the way we've always done it.
Right.
And instead of me saying, you know what, I'm not going to fall into the negativity and the toxic traits, I'm going to stand firm and be me and be positive. We push that away and we go along because in a lot of ways it's easy, and we don't realize the long-term effect that has on us because we think we've got it all figured out.
Right.
The reality is that then when we communicate externally, it's just as bad, but nobody says anything. And then when they do, we ignore it. But I think the signs are there. I think we just have decided, and society has built this up, that if it's difficult, ignore it, walk away, because I don't want to hurt your feelings. Well,
Right.
for me, it's like I would much rather hurt your feelings if we can get trust and respect in our organization, if we can communicate effectively, if we can be efficient and effective in whatever we're supposed to be in. I would rather hurt your feelings internally than have our reputation and the perception of who we are, what we're about, be negative and toxic all over the place.
Would you agree with me that some of the issues is companies have this tendency of make people compete against each other? And I think that creates silos. I've just left corporate America a year ago. So most of my career was in corporate America in different companies. And one of the things I identified in terms of the silos is my department is different than yours. But if we communicate, we are more effective towards the company. But we don't want to work together because I want my department to shine, not yours. Not understanding that that makes both of our jobs harder. And it's just this competition of my group needs to shine brighter than yours instead of we are all here for the same reason. We're trying to do a job for whatever the client or the people, the purpose, depending on what you're doing. And I think, I mean, being competitive is not all negative, but when we get to the point where we're not being effective, that's when it becomes toxic.
No, absolutely. I think, again, there is nothing wrong with a little competition.
Right.
But you got to do that the right way.
Right.
I can even tell you, without a doubt, you were 100% dead on. As a sergeant, way back many years ago, me and my lieutenant, we just didn't get along. We butted heads. We just had differing styles, and we had worked together on another shift as sergeants. And so instead of working together to help everybody around us, we butted heads because it was a competition for us. We made it that. And I'll tell you what happens is that when we start getting into competition, the ego gets in the way. And in corporate, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. I don't care whether you're at the bottom, the top. I don't care what organization you're in.
Right.
Ego is one of the biggest problems we have across the board, is that when it gets in the way, it defeats a lot of things and takes us down paths that we never intended to go. But once you start going, your ego doesn't let you stop and say, I messed this up. It's like, nah, I'm going to go because I'm better than this person, and we got to be better than that person, and our team's got to be better. Now, I always say is I want you to be the best that you can be, but I want you to do that the right way. I want you to do that without the egos. I want you to do that working together, building the trust and the respect. I wish I had gotten to the point I am now all those years ago, because, again, I realized that I was the cause of some of those other people to possibly stumble on their path. And I'm just going to tell you, that's not where anybody should want to be.
Right.
Is to cause someone else to stumble because you and your ego couldn't get out of the way.
This is taking me back to my last job. Can you tell me about your program and how it emphasizes on character-based leadership? And can you explain how character-based leadership can help mitigate and prevent toxic work environment?
So, we have several different classes. A lot of my topics intertwine in different classes because we focus on, like, change your mindset, change your attitude. Obviously, we're focusing specifically on the mindset and the attitude. And then I have a customer service one when we're talking about communication and dealing with difficult people. I have one that my most popular one is supervising with purpose. I could easily change that title to leading with purpose, and I'm actually developing a class that does have that, but it's a little more in depth. Well, in it, we talk about building a strong foundation. And where does your foundation have to be rooted in? Now, again, everything I do is character and biblically based. Again, when I talk in the secular world, there's a broad spectrum there, but we explore whatever I'm allowed to explore. So I don't hold it back if the class allows it. So I'm cautious because I know that some people, that's a turn off. I wish it wasn't, but it is
Mhm.
what it is in today's world. I don't want to limit the effect that it could have on them by not being able to address it. And so we talk about building a strong foundation. We talk about learning from your mistakes, making good decisions, embracing change, effective communication, teamwork, never giving up, accountability. Let's see, your attitude, your responsibility. There's probably about 21 topics that I actually have developed, and if you listen to all of those and what people find as we start talking about them, they all connect. You really can't have many of them without having the others. And so
Right.
what we do, another one we talk about is never compromise your character. And
Mhm.
honestly, your character is nothing more than what you allow to be acceptable behavior. What you say, this is the standard that I'm going to have, and I'm not going to cross, I'm not going to lower that standard, I'm going to stay there. What happens for all of us is that we make choices that we're going to do a certain things, and then we may blame that on someone else. And the reality of it is that's what you have allowed to be okay with. Behaviors, a bad behavior because of a bad behavior doesn't make it right. Okay? And in our mindset, what happens is that we go there. And so if we focus on the character aspect, you see, every single one of us is at least a leader of one ourselves. And so if I focus on my own character and leading myself well, when I lead myself better, I can lead other people better. But if I'm not leading myself well, and I'm not basing that on building my character the best that it possibly can be, based on biblical principles, based on integrity and trust and respect, then I'm not going to be able to lead anybody else very well.
Right.
And so I tell people all the time, the hardest person I've ever had to lead in my whole life is the person that looks back at me in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the guy that I fight with. That's the guy that I hate. That's the guy that I love. That's the guy that frustrates the you know what out of me because he's hard-headed. He wants to do it his own way when he knows there's a better way. He wants to go a certain way. And so part of that is trying to get people and teaching people that you got to take that hard look. And at some point, folks, we got to get out of our own way. We got to say, okay, I don't do anything with my own strength. I don't have any of these thoughts that I have that are the right way if I don't rely on certain things. And the biggest thing for me is relying on God for that.
Yes.
And then after that, we have to have accountability partners in place that help us along the way. For me, that's my spouse. I tell people that if you don't have that, you need to get that. And then it's other people that are going to help you maintain that. But it's not just the encouragement piece. See, everybody has encouragement. Everybody loves encouragement. But I need somebody to tell me when I'm being a doofus. I need somebody to tell me, Earl, when you're in your own way and you need to stop and get out. And if you can't, you need to take time out. Now, I promise you, my wife, I love her to death, but she will do that. That's how much she loves me because she don't want you to see the doofus that she knows I can be. Right. And that's what we need. We need people to tell us what we need to hear.
Right.
Not necessarily what you want to hear.
Right.
And so I can tell you without a doubt what I tell everybody out there, what I bring to you is what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And you may get your feelings hurt, but it's not my fault.
One of the things that I was thinking about is how do these toxic environments and the lack of these skills affect a person? Since you were saying the biggest issue we have is with ourselves, and one of the things when you were saying that is, and we can't get rid of ourselves. It's not like when you have a problem with somebody else, okay, I won't talk to you, I'm going somewhere else. You're with you 24/7, which makes it harder because you can't take a break from yourself. How all this negativity and the lack of accountability affects people's mental health and their livelihood, their family life, their prayer life, their everything in them. How have you seen it in your experience?
Way more than people want to admit because we think we have it figured out. We think, oh, it's just when I go to work. What we don't realize, though, is we take it home with us. We take those mindsets and those behaviors, and if we've had a bad day, we take it, and usually we take it out on someone. Okay? That goes back to that attitude is we allow the things that we encounter to put us in a direction instead of saying, hey, you know what? This is my job, and so I'm going to see things. I'm going to hear things that the average person doesn't see or hear.
Right.
I can't let that affect me to the detriment of one myself, but then all my other relationships.
Right.
And so when I'm teaching that, and especially in our your attitude, your responsibility classes, we're talking about keeping your mindset as healthy as you possibly can. So part of that is that we have to find ways that we put good things in, because when I put good stuff in, you know what comes out? Good stuff. If I put bad stuff in, if all I'm taking in is all the negative and all the stuff that we see out here, you know what's going to come out? The bad stuff. And even if I've kind of got this wall built up and I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing, when it gets really iffy sometimes, that bad's going to come out. I'm going to say things that I shouldn't say. I'm going to do things that I shouldn't do because I didn't have a good coping mechanism to take care of that. So for me, what I tell people is like, I self-reflect. You can call it meditation. You can call it whatever you want to. But really, it's just reflecting on either beginning of the day, what do you have going on? How'd you do yesterday? Or the end of the day, how did we do? And so how do I prepare myself in my mindset? Well, for me, you read the Bible. You read God's Word. Where are you going to get the tools that you need? Where are you going to get the guidelines? Well, our policy and procedure manual is the Bible.
Amen.
Everything we need is there, but you got to open it or listen to it. Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't do me any good to set it over here on the table and say, well, the Bible's right there. It has everything I need. Right? Right now it's holding the paper down though, so I can't move. Right? But I tell people all the time, it's like, it's not going to do you any good if you don't open it.
Right.
Okay? So you got to look at that. So for me, I'm not a Bible scholar by no means, but I have some verses that I have memorized. When I feel something, when I see something, when I know that there's a possibility that I could go a direction that I don't want to, I have those ready. I know when those things hit. Part of that is learning our triggers. Okay, so I know when I'm experiencing something, I know that trigger that's coming.
Yeah.
Mental health will teach people the same thing, is that understanding what triggers some of your emotions and your behaviors can help you process through that. So I may have an emotion and reaction, but not to the level it might be if I don't have things in place to help. And so in my self-reflection, again, I read, a lot of people do different stuff. You run, you do yoga, you work out. Again, for me, I'm better when I'm helping someone else. That keeps me healthy.
Yes.
Because if I'm trying to encourage and be positive for you, it keeps me strong to do that myself. Now, I realize not everybody can do that, but that's one of the things that God has gifted me with, is that when I do that, it helps me. And so that's one of those accountability pieces for me. I can't get on here and talk to you about this stuff if I'm living way different than that out here, because at some point, somebody's going to call me on that because I'm not being who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And so putting things in place that help that, surrounding yourself with the right people, okay? Because sometimes, again, I can't see some of the things that I may be doing, the behaviors and some of those, but if I've got somebody that's there that's going to help me, they can and they will.
Yeah.
And what happens, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to challenge you on one thing that you said. You said that helping other people makes you healthier and stronger, but you said that not everybody can do that. And my challenge to that is everybody can help somebody else.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in a big way. Not everybody has the time to go to a soup kitchen or the money to donate, but you can help your coworker with something. I remember years ago, I wrote a blog where I said, even if you go and buy something that buy one, get one free, you can donate that free one, and it could be to a pantry, or that neighbor that has 7 kids. They won't mind an extra can or bag of anything. So that was the only thing I was going to say, because I want to make sure that our listeners know that anybody can help. And when you get out of yourself to help somebody else, that will make a positive impact in your life.
Yeah, you're right. A better way I should have said that is not everybody has equipped themselves
right
to help. And so you're right. I used to tell people, when you're feeling like you're talking about, when you're feeling that way, do something for somebody else. When I have trouble praying, you know what I do? Pray for somebody else.
For somebody else.
Because it takes the focus off of us.
Yes.
So you're right, and I apologize for if I sent that in the wrong direction. But you're right, is that we just don't know that because maybe somebody hasn't told them what you just said.
Right.
Maybe we haven't quite equipped ourselves the way that we're talking about. Because that's one of the things that I tell everybody. If we're not equipping ourselves in our mental aspect of that, then we're not going to understand and know that. But if we want to do that, like you said, is that do something for someone else, and it changes your whole thought process.
Absolutely.
When I've done that, and thinking about what we've been talking about at our church and some of the message that we've been preaching, is that we sometimes think that, man, we have the woes. Nobody else is going through things. Nobody has it nearly as bad as we do. We were convicted of that, my wife and I, of maybe a little bit of like, man, why can't we get this? Why can't, we go here? Why isn't our business exploding when you see other people's doing it? And so for a few Sundays, we were sitting in church and just listening, and, we realized that, oh my gosh, one of the issues across the board is that we're so blessed, but we're always looking for the bigger blessing. That we miss the things that God takes care of. Is that we woke up this morning. I don't know about you, but that's a blessing.
Yes.
I mean, the alternative, maybe that's a blessing too. Okay, but for me, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
He puts us in places, and he puts roof over our head, meals on the table, clothes on our back.
Yeah.
We have health. And so when you listen to other people's things, you start to realize that, maybe me getting so down and discouraged about that is probably not the right way to go. Is that I need to look at that a different way, because I can encourage someone else, because we all have things that somebody else doesn't.
Yes. Absolutely.
Exactly. Do you have a success story where you have mentored someone and their mental health improved or the professional environment improved?
I do. I'm not going to give you his name, but when I first became a chief of police, one of the things I always do when I go in places is that I want to give folks the expectation, because a lot of that is that we don't have an expectation. We don't know what's going to happen, and every time somebody new comes in, especially the head of an organization, the better and more we can communicate, the easier it makes it as we move forward. And so I addressed a group of people, and I basically just told them that the only way for us to move forward is together, and that everybody in that room had to let go of everything that they had been dragging with them. All the negativity, all the woes, all the I didn't get this, that somebody treated me like this, is that you got to let it go.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to move forward if you don't let go of the past.
Right.
You can't. And so I remember I could almost picture them. Right, there was two of them. One of them transformed a little differently than the other, but I just remember them in the back of the room and the expression that came over their face, like, who is this guy and what the heck is he doing here? And he must be an idiot. And so over the course of time, again, I love to mentor. And so as we did things, I just told everybody, I don't care what anybody's done. I don't care what anybody says about anybody else. This is your opportunity to show me who you are and who we can be together. And so we processed through that. And in that organization, we went through a lot of stuff. We lost an officer in the line of duty. That's a difficult piece in itself. I think we did really well in moving forward and still supporting and doing all that stuff. And, you never know in the moment if you've had the impact. I mean, you can see some of it, but sometimes you don't know. I mean, again, a lot of what we do is plant seeds, and we give opportunities. And so, after I had left this organization, this is probably 3 years later, this gentleman texts me, and the crazy thing is I'm actually teaching one of my classes, and I get a text, and I don't see it till I go on break, but I'm in there teaching supervising with purpose. On break, I'm looking at my text message, and it's from this gentleman, and he basically says, Chief, I don't know if you know this or not, but you saved my life. And he went on to say that, because of putting the things in place, and because of mentoring and helping and changing that mindset and giving them an opportunity to be different than what they were labeled, that it helped him in his mental health. It helped him in how he was treating other people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, those things are hard for me to talk about because that credit doesn't go to me. That goes to God and the gift that He's given me. I want everybody to understand that. But you can't help but, understand that that's part of what you're supposed to do when you get that little bit of feedback. And to have that from somebody that you really did pour a lot into. That when you mentor somebody and you care about your people, it's not just hey, you go in there in 8 hours, okay, now we're done. But to hear that you had that kind of impact, that was huge for me because, there's times when you feel like, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Right.
Because I'm not hearing any of this. I'm not seeing the fruits of our labor sometimes. And so, we're all human. We sometimes question that, and we all like to have the encouragement. And so when I get those, it's like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Whether I see it, whether I get to relish in something like that or not, I'm supposed to plant the seed.
Well, let's talk about your book, Mentoring for Life. Can you tell us about the book?
Sure. So again, that was my second book.
Okay.
I've had a passion for mentoring. I did it as my thesis paper for my master's degree. It was about mentoring and doing that in my organization that I was in at the time, and how we did that. And so as we rocked along here, and after the second time that I was a chief, and then I had time on my hands again. I was like, okay, so I need to circle back around because I want to put this book out that talks about mentoring. And in the book, it's really talking about the individual, the organization. How can you mentor others? How can you build a program and then do that throughout the organization? And so in a lot of ways, it's a personal guide, but it's also an organizational guide of how do you find a mentor? How do you implement that program, and how do you put that in place? Because, across the board today, many organizations are suffering with recruiting and retention, and then on top of that, succession planning.
Right.
And so if we could get better at finding ways to show people value when they walk in the door. And for me, mentoring does that. I don't care what agency you're in. I don't care how big or small you are.
Right.
If you got one employee, you can mentor them.
Yes.
And so we created programs for new hires and then people that wanted to promote. And so Mentoring for Life it walks through that about how to do that. And I think in it you can also see my passion for the mentoring aspect of, I think people are better when they have someone that invests in them and shows them value. And in it, when you're talking about the mentoring, that doesn't mean, though, that I only tell you the good stuff, as we talked about before. That means that when you're struggling, I tell you you're struggling. When you're way off, I tell you you're way off. When you need a lump on the head, I give you the lump on the head, because if we built that relationship right, you would rather that come from me as your mentor than someone out there.
Right.
Yes.
We can process that so much better because I know that the person that cares about me doesn't want me to be a doofus.
Right.
So I don't make it as personal as if someone that I know is like, okay, I think you may just be trying to tear me down. I don't think you really care about who I am and what I'm about. And so I give you zero to little credence. But the person that I know, like my wife tells me, I know I better look, because if I don't, something's not going to be good, because she's not just going to tell me those kind of things. And she doesn't just tell me what I want to hear.
Right.
Sometimes I wish she might switch to that, but
it wouldn't be good, though.
No, I know. No. And she doesn't always, she does tell me those things too,
Of
but
course.
she does hold me to the standard that we've said we want to be held to.
That's good.
That's good. So you said this is your second book. How many books do you have?
I have 3 that are published.
Okay.
I have one that's in the editing process right now.
Okay, so tell us about that newer book, the third book.
Okay.
What's the title of that one?
The third book that I just published this year, that's Jumpstart Your Leadership and Spiritual Growth. It's a devotional.
Oh.
That one has 119 daily devotionals, and basically
Wow.
it walks through the topics that we talked about.
Mhm.
So there's a week's worth of each one of those topics that we go through. That we kind of just talked through it in that book. There's some verses that go with that lesson, and then there's a prayer. And so it does two things, because leadership and your spiritual peace are not separate from one another.
Mm-hmm.
If they are, then you got a problem. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was like, we always wonder, how do we do this? How can we do this? So it was just one of those that, how can we, and how cool would it be is if we could just jumpstart both our leadership growth and our spiritual growth
Yeah.
at the same time, while just allowing us to understand what that means, and asking God to help us through that. And that's what jumpstarts your leadership and spiritual growth. That's this book right here.
Okay.
That's that one. This is the second one.
Uh-huh.
Mentoring for life.
That's the first one.
Leadership lessons learned. Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
The next one I have is we are in the process of finishing up the editing, and basically it is. I hope I don't mess up this title, because my wife's going to get on me. Because it's one of those, when they're in front of you, you remember them all the time,
Right.
and when they're not, you kind of. So it's called Closing the Gap by Building Bridges for Organizational Individual Success.
Okay.
And so in it, we're just talking about, we have some gaps built in, because we have generational gaps. We have all kind of stuff that are there. But we build some in because we have poor communication. We have some other issues that happen there. And so in it, we're talking about the gaps that are there and how we need to close them. And the reality of that is that it can't be me because I'm the older generation. It's all my fault, or anybody else that's the younger generation, it's all their fault. And so I try to tell everybody is that we've got to figure out, as the older generation, how do I understand the newer generation better, and vice versa with the newer people. So it really is trying to understand, how do you close that gap? How do you build those bridges so that we can function better together, instead of when you talk to people, everybody that's seasoned and been there, this new generation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Okay, because I'm raising the new generation. So part of the issue is that how I raise them will be how they are later on. And so one of the things I've realized is that we've got to teach them how to communicate.
Yes.
Because this is how most of them do it.
Yes.
All day
Right?
long.
Yes.
Or in front of a computer.
Yes. All day long.
I mean, so it's just that's what that one's about. Hopefully it'll be out by Christmas. I'm hoping really before that, but we're counting for Christmas.
Oh, nice.
I have a question for you. When the toxicity comes from the top down, that's rough.
It is.
It's very rough, because certain people are toxic with the leader, and then there are other people that want to do good, but it could be really hard. It's hard working in a place where you don't know who you can trust.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I've been there.
Yes. I think we all have.
And
then you trust the wrong person.
Right.
Yes, been there, done that too.
And you think you can trust this person, and then you realize they're like a double agent. Okay? But when it's the leader, it could be a leader in a corporation. It could be the leader of a church. It could be the pastor.
For sure.
And that really, that makes it hard when the leader is not being a good example to the rest of the team. And then you're trying to overcome that and do what you're supposed to do. But then you get to the point you dread going to work.
Or the church or the ministry.
Or the church, the ministry, or whatever. You dread going because you know it's going to be mess. And that messes with your mind. After a while, you try to stay on your P's and Q's. But sometimes the enemy comes in and just get you on a day that you're just not feeling as strong. and you're tired of dealing with this, and then that causes you to fall because of your emotions. But when you go in and you talk to these organizations, is the leader there, or is it just the team of work?
So I've had a few leaders there. I've encouraged some of those people to go back because the reality is you're dead on, and I've had it where you've had a group of people. I have even had some boards that were actually the toxic pieces
Mm-hmm.
that trickle down into the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult when you're pushing upward.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I usually tell people is that at some point we're all going to come to a crossroads decision. And basically what that means is that do I stay or do I go?
Right.
And so if I stay, then I've committed that I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna have the positive mindset. I'm gonna do everything that I can for me and set that example. Now you can do all that, and some of those people that if they don't want to do anything different and no one's holding them to a standard and accountable, they may not change. So then you may have to say, is it worth what it does to me to stay in this environment? If it is, then you have to figure out how to make that work. And again, you can't do that by yourself. You've got to talk to people. You've got to have people help you. But some of us get to that point where we realize that, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. Because it's too much of a weight on me.
Yes.
It's too much of a weight on my family. And the payoff is not there.
Yes.
And so then I tell people, then leave well. And when you leave well, leave and don't look back. Leave and go give it your all somewhere else. Put all that good that you have, that you've been doing into yourself, put that in another organization.
Right.
Find a place that's a good fit for you. Now, I've been places that I at the end of the day, I would just tell you I wasn't a good fit. I only stayed 7 months at the second place I was the chief. They said they wanted what I brought to the table, but they did not. And so, I look back at that as like, at the end of the day, they never should have brought it. They really shouldn't. They weren't ready to make the decisions and changes they said that they wanted. And so I understand, because I did trust some people that weren't the right people to trust, because you have to put your trust somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so when I tell people, it's like, so keep yourself strong. If nothing else, you keep yourself, your mind, all that stuff, you keep it strong and positive. You set the example. And then if you feel like I can't do this in this environment, pray about that. Ask God to release you from that and send you to a place where you can go be what He wants you to be.
Right.
Now, I've struggled in a place for a couple of years that was extremely toxic. And part of my job was turning that around and doing that. And I can tell you from the day one when I got there, I was trying to leave there. I'm talking about actively. I put in hundreds of applications within a very short time frame because I wanted to get out of there. And then it became my job to change the culture and the environment. Thinking, thanks, God. I asked to be released, and you said, not yet. And so, I go through this, and then when I think that I'm about to get to the pinnacle, which is the top of the organization, He says, hey, guess what? It's time for you to go. What? So it's that, set that example, because I'll tell you this. I tell people all the time is that after leaving that organization, some of the things and a standard that they were held to that wasn't good, they've been released as well, because part of that was a personal thing with me. And so when I look at that, is that I have made improvements to that organization. I left it better than I found it, but they're even better now that I'm gone, because they got things that they were never going to get if I stayed.
Right.
So part of that is that you got to let go of those things. And again, I go places. I'm a change agent that people bring in. I go in to turn that culture and that mindset around. That's the job that I do. That's the job that I do now in my business, to go in there and find ways to do that. And if I could challenge anybody out there, it would be leaders, owners, executives. Folks, you got to set a better example of positivity and change some of this toxicity and be accountable for same things that you want everybody else in your organization to be accountable for.
Right.
If we could get that in our head across the board, and I'm talking to everybody out there now, if you want to hold people accountable, then you be accountable.
Yeah.
Because the standard is there to keep us all where we need to be. And if you can't, I just tell people, step aside and let somebody come in that can hold folks to the standard that you say is supposed to be there.
Right.
If we could get back to that, just think about what our country could be, what this nation could be, what this world could be.
Yes.
If we were just accountable for the things that we were supposed to be accountable. And that our leaders held themselves to a standard before they hold everybody else to a standard.
Yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because accountability is a big thing in every aspect of our lives. I remember hearing our pastor, and also our very first podcast was a PK, a pastor's kid, who's now an adult, and was talking about how sometimes, because pastors or leaders, and I could probably in the workplace, VPs, they're in such a higher position that they think that if they find an accountability person, there's a weakness, or that they would, they don't know who to trust, obviously, because it's the higher you go, the lonelier it gets. But it's very important. It's important for, like you said, everybody's leading somebody, but it's important for husbands so that they can lead their households. It's important for wives so that they can manage in their household and their kids. It's important for ministers so that they can lead their congregation. It's important for supervisors and managers and directors so that they lead the people they have, because we all have blind spots.
Yes.
We all have blind spots. And the thing is, unless you have somebody who's holding you accountable, you're not going to see them. Because we all think we're doing the right thing.
We do. Most of us, yes.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're purposely evil.
There's a few out there that I'm like, okay. But you're right. For the most part, yes.
For the most part, whatever normal is. So for the most part, everybody thinks that, everybody's trying to do the best that they can. And we have blind spots. And unless you're purposely trying to ruin somebody, which there are people who are like that.
They are.
Of course. True. You're really trying to do the best that you can. And if you're doing it wrong, or if you're doing it with the wrong motive, sometimes you're not going to see that. And having somebody that keeps you accountable, that can, like you said, the best friend is not the one that tells you how pretty you are, how sweet you are. It's the one that tells you, what is wrong with you?
Exactly.
You're doing this wrong. You talk to this person wrong. You're not realizing that you hurt this person. You're not realizing that you're going down this path. That's the person who actually cares about you. And so I think we all need that. Regardless, even if we lead a family, an organization, a ministry, or even if it's just for us, because that's the only way I think we're going to grow, manage those blind spots, and
right, exactly. And like we're talking about ministry, right? We're talking about organizations, corporations, but especially in ministry. I believe that you're a leader in a church, a leader of a ministry, you should have an accountability partner.
Absolutely.
You should have more than one.
A pastor that does not have an accountability partner, that concerns me.
But you're exactly right. I have a client. It's a ministry. It's a church, and there was a group of people, and they were the deacon body. They didn't have elders, so everything that an elder would do falls to the deacons. But you don't have that set up. And one of the issues that they said is that we're not responsible for the accountability of the pastor. And I said, you absolutely are, because if it's not your job, then whose is it?
Right.
And if a pastor thinks that his group is so small, because some churches are small, Find another pastor that you can talk to.
Yes.
Find somebody that will help you process through things, because it's really not, when I tell people, when you're looking at those things, when I'm talking about mentoring somebody or changing that mindset or that attitude, I am not looking at the individual.
Right.
I'm looking at the mindset. I'm looking at the attitude. I'm looking at the action and the behavior. And so when we're talking about that group of people, because in my group there's 3, and they wanted to point the fingers and say it's someone's fault. It's true. It's all of your fault. So when you look at what you bring to the table, then you can start to figure out, why are we not communicating well? Why do we not have cohesion and unity? Why are we not doing this the way that we should? And what happens with pastors and some of our church leaders is that we put them up here. I'm not saying you shouldn't encourage them. They need it more than a lot of people do.
Right. Okay?
They need to be lifted up.
Right.
But they don't need to be lifted up in a way where there's a different standard.
Right.
Because the standard,
there's still men or women.
In the Bible, if I'm correct, and I'm pretty sure that I am, there's not a thing in there where Jesus puts things out and the writers put things out. They said that if you elevate yourself to the position of teacher, pastor, whatever, your standard and accountability level goes down because you've made it. Matter of fact, I believe it was the opposite.
It's the opposite.
Definitely.
The minute we say, God, take me into your kingdom, I don't want to be this way anymore, my standard should have went up tremendously.
Yes.
And then when I take on each role, I became a husband, my standard goes up. I became a father, my standard goes up. I become a leader in the community, in my organization, that standard goes up. And when I'm called to lead other people, the standard doesn't lower, it rises.
Right.
And the problem is, instead of helping people rise and maintain to the standard, we want to bring the standard down, or say, you know what, it doesn't count. Well, yes, it does.
Yes,
it's for all of us. And that's exactly what happens in the ministry or anywhere else when someone gets elevated to those positions, that we get the wrong idea, is that now the accountability changes. And some of them even get the idea that now I'm not accountable, but you are. Well, I don't know how anybody can hold someone else accountable to a standard if you're not holding yourself at least accountable to the very same standard.
Lastly, this has been wonderful. What are your future goals for leading and learning with Character LLC? And how can people get involved in your program?
So we've got 2 things going right now. I have a leadership summit coming up that's a virtual summit. That they can find that information will be on my Facebook page and my website. That's earlmorrison.com. Also on LinkedIn. Those are the ones I use the most. But it's the change your mindset, change your attitude. Basically, it's that leadership summit. It's just a presentation of that. That course is a 6-week course. There's 6 topics in it, and then there's also 6 weeks of mentoring one-on-one with me following that. And then in October, starting October 1, we have a year-long leadership journey to transformation, where we're going to take a topic monthly, and basically we're going to kind of walk through every topic that I have in the books, and we're going to take one monthly. I'll do a presentation that will probably be recorded so that you can listen to it at your leisure. And then there'll be opportunities for us to meet via Zoom as a group and kind of discuss that. And then throughout the month, I'll send encouragement and things, from the devotional, where you'll get, both the dailies, but we're going to spread it out to that month. So, we're excited about that, just to provide that opportunity for everybody out there. I think they're affordable. I just had this conversation with my wife. I'm so frustrated by so many organizations out there that try to tell us that we need to charge more, because if we don't charge more, then we don't have any value in what we're presenting. I beg to differ with that, because to me, it's the quality. And if I make it affordable, it's for everyone. I'm not trying to target some rich person that doesn't really care at the end of the day anyway, that has the money to spend. I'm targeting the everyday person that really needs help, that needs the affordable help. That transformation for a year is less than $1 a day. how would you not want to spend less than $1 a day to transform yourself as a leader, as an individual, and maybe in there even jumpstart your spiritual growth?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We are so grateful that you had this conversation with us and everything that you're doing through your ministry and your organization. It's so needed.
Mhm.
And like we were saying, not only in the church, in ministry, but especially in the workplaces.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's something that I hope that many people listen to this podcast and contact you because it is so needed. And now that we know that it's so affordable,
Mhm.
you know, you even if you have a small organization, you have no excuse not to bring value to your company. All your books are on your website,
I do.
earlmorrison.com, right?
Yes, ma'am. You can get them there, or you can get them on
On
Amazon or Barnes and
Amazon.
Noble. They're all there.
Okay.
Obviously, if you get it from me, I might sign it.
Ah,
Tell me you want it
nice.
signed, I'll sign it if you let me know.
Okay.
But yes, you can get the books, and any of our services are there at earlmorrison.com. And we encourage everybody, follow us on Facebook. Again, we're constantly putting information out there. Our goal, like we said, like I told you before, is just to plant seeds and encourage people to again know that you can be different. You can change the negative to positive if you put forth the effort, if you're disciplined, if you're intentional. We can make a difference.
That's
And
good.
we will have all those links in our descriptions so people can reach you.
This was good, Earl. This was
Wonderful.
really, really good. We appreciate your dedication. We appreciate the gift that God has given you.
Mhm.
Okay, this is not something you just decide one day I'm going to do. It's got to be down in you. And you have to have a relationship with God for Him to pour this into you. And like Natty said, if you want to learn more, we're going to have all of Earl's links on our website.
Mhm.
Okay? And we thank you. We really appreciate the passion that God has given you. We
I
really do.
appreciate you guys having me on, really.
Thank you, Earl.
And
Thank you.
this is your house whenever you're welcome back.
And whenever you write another book or devotion or whatever,
Let us know.
let us know. We'd
Mhm.
love to have you back on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for tuning in today to Thrive by the Rising Muse. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and subscribe to our podcast. Remember that if you're experiencing a mental crisis, you can dial 988. If a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis, dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room. We want you to be safe.
Remember to follow us on social media for updates and more content on faith, family, and mental health. We are at the Rising Muse on all platforms. Until next time, stay inspired
And don't forget to thrive.
Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.